Welcome back. Day 17 of the government shutdown, and House Speaker Mike Johnson is frustrated.
I feel like on a day like this, at the end of another long week, I just feel like we ought to apologize. I hate that we have to do this. I don't want to be here any more than you do talking about this subject. It is so difficult to be a happy warrior when you know that so many millions of American people are suffering, being made to suffer unnecessarily because of the Democrats' political games.
Budget Director Russ Vought saying this afternoon more cuts are coming due to the shutdown. He says the Democrats have helped drain cash from the Army Corps of Engineers, and he says they now will be pausing over $11 billion in projects in New York, San Francisco, Boston, and Baltimore. And while the money, at least for now, isn't going out, we've got a record amount coming in from President Trump's tariffs. Let's take a look at the numbers over at the wall. The Treasury Department says that for tariff revenue last month, it totaled over $30 billion. That's a record high and up nearly 300% over the same time last year. Overall, customs revenue for fiscal year 2025 also hitting a record high with over $200 billion collected. Now, all that is helping the government see a surplus last month of nearly $200 billion. It's the highest September on record. And President Trump is talking about tariffs. He did so earlier today.
I used to watch in amazement at how stupid our country was, how stupid they were. And we're not stupid anymore. If we didn't have tariffs, we would have no national security.
Trump has often touted the power of tariffs in many conflicts. Just this week, President Trump brokered a deal in the Middle East, and while the ink is barely dry, the left is taking to streets tomorrow to protest the president. It's a second round of No Kings demonstrations planned across the country. You'll remember those from this summer. So why are they doing this? And just days after President Trump's ceasefire in Gaza. Joining us now to answer that question is one of the organizers of the protest, co-president of Public Citizen, Robert Weissman. Robert, thank you for being with us here today to try to shed some light on what is driving you to the streets tomorrow. And I have seen some of your videos, I've seen some of your speeches at previous rallies. So I ask you pleasantly, without a full stump speech, why? Why are you protesting President Trump suggesting he wants to be king?
Well, I'll pleasantly reply, and it's great to be with you, Will. We're worried about a president who is displaying an authoritarian agenda and carrying it forward. We're worried about a president who's deploying National Guard troops on our streets for no reason. We're worried about a president who's illegally shutting down the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that protects consumers from financial fraudsters and ripoffs. We're worried about a president who's illegally firing employees and taking advantage of the shutdown to weaken our public health by dismissing people from the Center for Disease Control. And we're worried about a lot more, but I'll take to heart your request not to give you a stump speech and pause right there.
Yeah, I'd love to walk through a few of those with you. You see those as the move of an authoritarian government. Let's start with the National Guard. The National Guard has been deployed to several cities to do two things. One, to stop the demonstration against ICE and federal officers looking to enforce our immigration laws, to enforce deportations. Now, deportations is something we've seen from almost every administration. In fact, over 3 million deportations under President Obama. Would you call President Obama's actions authoritarian and that of a king?
Well, I think President Obama's deportation policy was disgraceful. But what we're talking about here is the deployment of the National Guard, as you say, against protesters or on fake claims of rising crime, when in fact crime is going down. I think the purpose of the National Guard deployments is to intimidate people from exercising their First Amendment rights. And the governor of Oklahoma agrees.
To be clear, and I was being charitable by calling what the National Guard is doing addressing protesters. I imagine you'll be out in the streets tomorrow, and if you remain peaceful, you won't see any of the National Guard. But if you behave the same way they have in Portland, and that is you attack ICE officers or you destroy property, specifically and especially federal property, then you should, and you will see the National Guard. And there will be a positive outlook, perhaps not for you and your freedom, but for the rest of us who see that as a disgrace to civil society.
Well, when there is civil unrest, normally the police are called in, and if the police can't handle it in extreme situations, the governor might invoke the National Guard. To take Portland, for example, that's not happening. according to the federal government itself, what was happening in Portland when the president deployed the National Guard was minimal. The National Guard was there based on no protest whatsoever.
Robert,
the local authorities were clear. If there was any problem, they were ready to handle it. So I don't think the National Guard was deployed to deal with objective problems.
Do you think it's an objective problem when ICE officers are the targets of assassination, for example, in Dallas, Texas?
No one should be assassinated. That goes without saying. And our movement is a profoundly nonviolent movement. And that's what you're going to see on the streets tomorrow from the No King, with the No Kings protest.
And I appreciate that.
But there is a problem. There is a problem of violence.
I do want to say this. I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate that both you condemn violence, which, by the way, is a bit, I'm not going to call it a rarity, but it is a declining proposition on the left. We've seen the polls where many on the left see political violence as a legitimate outlet of pushing back on something they believe, like you, is an authoritarian regime. So it's big that you suggest it's not appropriate. And you also will not have it tomorrow in your protest, your No King protest. But don't you think that by saying President Trump is an authoritarian, by saying that, you're making people believe that their lives are actually at risk? In fact, by that rhetoric, aren't you legitimizing those, even if they're crazy? You're giving them the legitimacy to turn to violence?
No, unfortunately, we're describing the reality that we're dealing with in our lives. You want to talk about threats to lives, Will? The Medicaid cuts that were forced in the reconciliation bill will cost 50,000 lives a year. That's real violence, and it's not speculative. It's well documented by academic experts. So
if you think public policy, and cutting government spending is real violence, you and I have very different definitions of violence. And Robert, I think that you have a real long look in the mirror that's required, that if you continue to call a politician you oppose, that's fine. I don't begrudge you your disagreement. But you continue to call a politician you oppose a would-be king and authoritarian. I don't know if you personally have used the word fascist, but it's not a long lead. That people will listen to you and they will take up violence.
You heard me flatly condemn violence. And our movement, it's not just that it's going to be peaceful tomorrow. Nonviolence is a core principle of what we're doing. That said, you easily could have played Mike Johnson and a series of other Republican leaders calling us Antifa, saying, which now, according to Stephen Miller, is equivalent to being a domestic terrorist. So we're actually being called domestic terrorists for protesting on the street peacefully.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, Stephen Miller's called you, Robert Weissman, Antifa?
The millions and millions of people who are going to peacefully protest as part of No Kings tomorrow have been labeled domestic terrorists.
There is Antifa.
If you're worried about, name calling, my friend,
exists.
And if you're not Antifa, Republican Party to see where it's coming from.
If you're not Antifa, good. I don't know if anybody's called you Antifa, but there is Antifa. And if Antifa is at your rallies tomorrow, I would say you might see. There is no organization in the United States. We're not going to live in Never Never Land. We're not going to live in Never Never Land. I got to leave it here. And if Antifa's there tomorrow, I'm sorry, you should and will see the National Guard. If you're peaceful as you suggest, then we will listen to what you have to say.
You're going to see millions of people, the largest peaceful demonstration in American history.
Robert,
and I hope you come join us, my friend.
I won't be there, but I'll be paying attention. I promise I'll be paying attention, Robert. Thank you for your time. Hey, it's Will Cain. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Cain podcast for full episodes right now.